One of the main talking points after Man City's win at Brentford in the Premier League last weekend was Rodri's early withdrawal due to injury. As we know, he's been recovering from a serious knee injury sustained last season, but this time he was taken off early because of a minor hamstring tweak. Rodri's since allayed fears of sustaining a serious injury, and he was seen moving sort of a quite animated way actually on the touchline during that game to suggest that it wasn't actually too serious after all. But nevertheless, it's still a bit of a concern to see him come off, before the half-hour mark in that game.
Hmm.
And he's since revealed that he will not join up with the Spain squad ahead of World Cup qualifiers against Georgia and Bulgaria, having previously been called up to that squad. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts on Rodri now and his battle to get back to his best? What do you think is best for Rodri at this moment in time?
Um, Time. No, that there's nothing we can do. I saw a lot of people, a lot of frustration from people talking about has he been rushed back and all that kind of stuff. I think that I didn't really know the extent of the injury and how it works. I was reading about it a few months back, and I think the context of why he feels like how he is really important. So essentially, when you do your ACL, a lot of people don't realize is they essentially graft a little bit of ligament out from another part of your body, usually your thigh or your calf. I can't remember when it was. Either way, they take a bit of ligament out somewhere over your body and you put it into your knee. And that new ligament essentially replaces the old damaged ligament. The issue with that is that ligament is a very different fiber. Like it's different. A different stretchiness. I don't want to use that medical word. I'm sure that's the word, but it takes an awful long time for that ligament to stretch and be as supple as it needs to be for the knee, which of course never stops bending. And that is an incredibly painful, difficult procedure to do, as you can imagine. So the downside of that is you've obviously affected a muscle from the other part of your body. Your knee is a completely different ligament in there. The only way for that ligament to get up to speed is to actually work it. Unfortunately, I know, and I've seen people online saying, "Look, oh, he needs to rest," and like the thing is that resting doesn't change anything. Like that ligament still needs to stretch out at some point. So if you rest for 2 years, you're just going to be at the same point. The ligament's not suddenly going to get supple again. It's the only way you'll get to the level, or I guess the flexibility it needs for elite football is to play elite football. Because otherwise, if you sat on your sofa playing FIFA or whatever, it's not going to do anything. So I think people have a fundamental misunderstanding of that injury and how you need to recover from it. Essentially, you have to just play your way through it so your body adapts to it. So once you know all that, you realize, well, yeah, he is going to occasionally pull his hamstring. He is going to occasionally feel a bit of pain because it's been stretched further, it has been stretched before, or whatever. There's nothing much we can do about that. But then the inflammation goes down, and then he's stretched a bit more. It's just how it is. So I think Guardiola understands this. He said he told Rodri that he wouldn't be himself at all this season. He said you'll have the best version of yourself at the 2026 World Cup for Spain, and that's when he'll probably be back to his best. And I guess there's always this urge to do something. We're in an era of impatience in every form of life. Everything has to be fixed now, and everyone's always got a better answer. But sometimes you just got to ride it out. And I think right now Rodri's in a situation which he probably knows, and the City's medical team will know. He's had an incredibly serious injury, the kind of injury that 30 years ago would end your career, um, potentially end your career, if not, very close. And some people get lucky, can come back a bit quicker. But Rodri is he's not the youngest anymore. He's not like he's 20 years old anymore. He's pushing 30 now. He's like 28, 29. And I think his body in the most demanding position in the world, and given his profile, people are going to get close to Rodri and going to kick him, going to give him a tough time. It's going to be difficult. So I don't think we can really do much. And obviously we technically can't because we're not physios. But I don't think City can do much either. They can just be patient and play through it. And I wouldn't known that until I understood how the injury works and the surgery, and you sort of realize how no amount of rest is going to change this. Unfortunately, it is occasionally, of course, if you feel pain, you stop. But if you don't feel pain, you got to crack on. And I think that's what City have been trying to do with Rodri, just playing to the demands of his body. And he's been very honest about that, Rodri. And he said he didn't really feel, he said something about not feeling he didn't feel like it was a fitness thing or anything like that. He just said he felt a bit tight and he decided to come off straight away. And I think this injury isn't that serious for what it's worth. I think it is generally just a bit of a pull, from his body adapting to the standards of elite football again. So hopefully he'll be all right. And, it's timed quite nicely as well, of course, international break. So hopefully he'll be back after that. But yeah, it's just something we're going to have to accept as City fans because Rodri has had a horrendous injury, and these things take an awful lot of time for the not just to recover, but then to adapt and change, and for his body essentially to accept that ligament in his knee and reach the standards he did beforehand.
Exactly, and this injury in particular, the one against Brentford was actually a hamstring. He just said he felt a little bit of his hamstring. He said it, although it's not that much, and he said that the most important thing is that it's not that big.
Yeah,
So those quotes suggest that it's a bit of relief that for City. You'd assume that Rodri now, knows his body really well. He knows what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and so
yeah.
the fact that he's coming out saying that, yes, he's got this injury, but he's probably come off more as a precautionary measure. So the fact that he's come off and said that it's not a big issue must be a relief for City in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does sound like it's just 2 or 3 weeks, which is perfect with the international break. Yeah, that's the other thing. When you've got that experience that he's got, you do know your own body, don't you? You do know when something feels right. And I think it is just he looked. I don't. There's a lot of talk about him looking visibly distressed and all that kind of stuff. I think he just looked frustrated, to be honest, because he's Rodri. He wants to play football, and he was probably enjoying the game, and he was doing all right. So yeah, I think he's going to be fine. This is just him being ultra cautious, which is the way to be right now. Because as you were saying earlier, it's all linked. A hamstring pull, if he forces on that, he probably couldn't play. I don't know, couldn't play on it anyway. But if he did, might then get to his knee or whatever. So you've got to be ultra cautious right now, and they've made the right call to take him off. And now the rest is needed because that hamstring thing is that just needs rest, and I'm sure he'll get it, and hopefully back after the international break.
And Guardiola, you mentioned it before about how he said that Rodri probably won't get back to his best until that 2026 World Cup next summer. If that is the case, how much of an impact do you think that will have for City, challenging for the Premier League title this season and other trophies, missing such a key player in that team that will not be at his best?
It's incredibly difficult. He's the best player in the world. So, oh no, Dembele technically now, but to me, he still is at the very best. I think Rodri is 1 of 1, and he's the best midfielder in the world, definitely. I It's one of those things where if he was back this season at his best level, I think City go on to win the league. I think he's that good. I think he's the glue to the entire side, and everyone around him, Reinders, Nico Gonzalez, all these players, they bounce off his ability and they thrive alongside him. Like right now, Rodri's playing. He's been playing more like first season Rodri, I would say. Well, he's pretty been good, but he hasn't had the magic. And I think he still looks like Rodri because he is Rodri, literally, but he still moves a bit like Rodri and he's done some Rodri things, which probably has given us a false sense of security where actually he's been nowhere near the level that Rodri is. Rodri at his very best is turning people with ease. He's actually dribbling. He's actually smacking it at goal from 25 yards, often scoring. He's an all-round absolute beast who eats up the entire pitch. Where Rodri so far this season has been good. He's been there. He's been decent. I mean this with the greatest respect to Nico Gonzalez, who I think is going to be a really good player. But I don't think there's a massive difference between the two on the pitch. And I think the City carried on playing how they were playing when Rodri went after 20 minutes when Nico Gonzalez came on. And I think that's because Nico Gonzalez is very 7 out of 10 player right now, a good player. He's not a great player. He's getting better. As Guardiola said, he's very coachable. But I think that's where I think Rodri is. Rodri's a 10 out of 10 footballer, but right now he's playing at 70% of his ability. And that's probably why the gap between the two right now doesn't seem that massive because obviously Rodri's much smarter on the ball, but the physicality Nico Gonzalez has got is much higher right now than Rodri. And I think right now we're only seeing a small part of what makes Rodri so brilliant. I hope we see the very best of him this season. I suspect he'll get there. I think he will do. But I don't think, Guardiola or City expected him to be anywhere near his best. Maybe us as fans naively hoped he would be, but this is just part of his his progress. Unfortunately, it's going to take an awful long time. And look, even Van Dijk had a bit of an off season after he came back and forth. From what I can tell, the before fans were like he wasn't quite as demanding as usual. It took him a year or so to find his best form. And I think this is where we're at. And there's not much we can do. City would be a better side and absolutely in the contention, unquestionably in contention for the Premier League title if he was at his best. As it is, we still might have a chance, but you know, Rodri might not be quite as involved as we'd hoped. We'll see.